Well, for more, France24's international affairs editor James André joins me now on set. James, so can you tell us about this case? What exactly was at stake?
So what exactly was at stake was the interpretation of a 2010 Equality Act that was taken by Westminster, by which basically all groups were equal before the law and were protected. So what happened in 2018 was basically that Scotland, the Scottish Parliament, decided to increase the number of women on the boards of public organisations in Scotland, and indeed they were challenged by this group, For Women Scotland, when they decided that indeed trans women could also be considered as women in the counts for these seats. Basically, the Scottish courts ruled in favour of trans rights, and indeed decided that trans women were women under these rules. And basically, this group took it to the Supreme Court. And what we have today is a ruling, because indeed this has been a very contentious issue in the United Kingdom. A lot of people have been talking about it. Of course, it works with a lot of other issues such as trans women in sports, etc., etc. And so basically the idea was to get a very clear ruling, and this is indeed what Lord Patrick Hodge said in his speech. He said, this is a very clear-cut this decision. It's a unanimous decision, 5 judges in favour of this decision. And he said, the point was really to solve this issue once and for all. This is the highest court in the land in the UK. And indeed the idea is to say that, yes, indeed it is basically sex is defined by biology, and a woman is defined by biology and not certification. And he went down to explain that indeed there were too many incoherences when it came to law if you indeed included trans women into that definition, including, for example, for single-sex spaces or other issues. So he said it was made things too complicated, and indeed this ruling was now quite clear, but he also insisted on the fact that this did not discriminate the transgender community.
So, James, this obviously comes in the context of a much wider reaction to diversity initiatives, including with respect to transgender rights, notably coming from the United States now that Donald Trump is back in office. So can you tell us more about how this fits into that context?
Well, absolutely. I think, this is a very, very important ruling. Why? Because indeed, the point of this Supreme Court ruling is to try and clarify things. Because indeed, it's been an ongoing battle for years when it comes to both, for example, feminist organizations who, have been accused to be TERFs, as they say, when it comes to the other camp who say they are trans-exclusionary feminists, radical feminists. And we've seen this play out, I'd say, in a much more violent way in the United States of America, where you got to a stage where in some states, for example, your kids could be taken from you if they said they were trans and you were not giving them, for example, transition therapy. On the other hand, in other states, kids could be taken from you because you were giving them gender-affirming therapy when they were underage. Well, indeed, in the United States, now we have Donald Trump in power. One of the first things he signed into law as he arrived was to make it quite clear that, for example, he voted that there were only 2 sexes, and also said, for example, that men could not compete in women's sports. I quote, right. The thing is, when you look at how the public opinion is shifting in the United States, I was looking up a very interesting, poll in the New York Times, which is definitely not an outright outlet. Well, they say that 80% of people who've been asked that they consider that, women's sport should be only for women. 71% say that indeed they consider that gender-affirming therapy should not be given to people under 18. So basically, we do have a mood shift, if you will, but it is still a very contentious issue, and there will very probably be a lot of, political activism around this decision in weeks to come.
Sounds like that mood shift is indeed international then. James André, thank you very much.